Hi there, my name's Pat Kane. Welcome to the Constitute. The Constitute. What is a constitute? Well, it's a kind of flexible term. I discovered that in the dictionary there's a verb for constitute, but there isn't a noun for a constitute in the way you might have an institute. And so I'm leaping straight in there and trying to sort of define it as basically a kind of an ad hoc, flexible structure within which certain things can be done, thought, but it doesn't depend on bricks and mortar. It can be clicks and mortar, it can be your devices, it can be a lunchtime conversation, it can be a large group facilitation. It's pretty flexible as to its structure, and it kind of emerges where good souls are and commune with each other and see what they can emerge out of that communion. So that sounds quite mystical and imprecise, but let's leave it that way for the moment. And so what I'm going to constitute today is a kind of filter of the kind of stuff that I'm interested in and that I've been interested in for most of my adult life as a musician, a writer, a futurist, an activist, many other things as well, but let's just take those four. And what I want to try to do on a regular basis is to come to the Constitute and see if I can frame and filter the enormous torrent of significant material that comes to me from the way I've constructed my channels. And I guess that some of you feel that way too, is that it's a kind of an endless flow for me of quite high quality content that's just permanently available, even in the midst of these benighted social media days with the muscularity and all the rest of it. That's muscularity, shaping and distorting what was once, a beautiful information column. Commons, I'm being very prelapsarian here. But how do we take a step back from the torrent and join up some connections, big connections between different parts of our interests? That's what the Constitute is going to do in these moments for this transmission in this place, which I expect will be Substack, because that's where I'm doing most of my significant non-musical work at the moment. So what we're going to constitute today? Well, one of my filters is my iBooks or my Books app on my two Mac devices, which is obviously the iPhone 16 that I have here and the Mac laptop. And what I find myself doing and salting away for later, whenever that later comes, is finding research PDFs and papers that well-functioning academics find a way to get out and make available on the significant channels, on the significant media channels, presuming that their peer groups can pick up this material. And I'm sticking close to my peer groups on various bits of social media, including the dreaded X, because I don't want to actually abandon the patterns of affinity and interest that I've built up over the years. I want to stay with them, and so I'm still there. But I harvest their gold as they put it up, and someday I will sit and read it all, or some days I do sit and read some of it. But it may be just quite interesting just to see where the last 6 PDFs have come from, what their topic is, what the connections behind them might be, and whether it's joining up in my mind, and hopefully it'll create some connections in your mind. I will put these links to these papers in the notes below this video in the Substack, so that you can take your own intellectual adventure. So let's start. The first of them, the first 2 that I should pick out is one titled Conscious Artificial Intelligence and Biological Naturalism, which is by the noted neuroscientist Anil Seth. And the other one is called Shared Subcortical Arousal Systems Across Sensory Modalities During Transient Modulation of Attention. What am I doing? That's by Aya Khalaf. The shared subcortical one is interesting because it's coming from a field of neuroscience which I think is incredibly political and pertinent and urgent, which is the search to find whether our emotions are constructed primarily or significantly and preeminently, or whether those emotions are triggered as evolutionary inheritances in visceral, involuntary ways that we can't help but respond. And that is completely relevant to the age of populism and entrepreneurial politics and political entrepreneurialism that we're in. I think the emotional level is probably primary in the way that people guide their citizenship, and so it behooves us to understand what's going on at the emotional level in a way that is as determinate as we can be. And between these two papers, we kind of have two different schools of thought which completely grip me, one of which is called the essentialist or affective school of thought, which is basically saying that we have somewhere between 6 and 10 primary evolved emotions that are there as guides to us as an organism to survive. So that means they're deeply wired, they're pre-voluntary, they rush up out of us rather than us being in charge of them. That's one school called the essentialist school. The other school, which Anil Seth belongs to mostly, is called the constructionist school, and which says that the human brain is, and its emotions are culturally and semiotically and semantically and symbolically constructed much more than they are some kind of ancient set of humours that's triggerable by a right-wing populist. Now, to get for either of these to be correct, there's an element of both that's correct, of course, but you can. I'm sure you can begin to see why it's important to try to understand this stuff. And I try to understand this stuff. I try to see where the landscape is between emotion as construction and emotion as triggerable evolutionary inheritance, because I think it's politically important. And it's just to say that the model that I cleave to, which is Jack Panksepp's affective neuroscience, has 7 primary emotions, 3 of which are anger, fear, panic, sadness. Another one which is lust, and another 3 which is care, play, and curiosity. Now, the negative ones are more powerful and leave more of a residue in the body than the positive ones, but the positive ones are there. And it's been my interest over the last couple of years to point people who are involved in raising visions for change, both not to forget how involuntary these powerful dark emotions are, but also how also involuntary and available care, play, and curiosity is. These are also survival emotions, but they help us to survive by exploring and chasing down and rehearsing options and repairing people for the fray in ways that are as elemental as the darker emotions. So that's why those 2 PDFs are there, because I'm thinking about this all the time. The other 2 PDFs that are here is that addresses this in a kind of oblique way are Making Wales Work, Plaid Cymru's New Economic Plan, and a paper from the Corbyn era days of Labour, Alternative Models of Ownership. So how is theories of and instances and policy recommendations for better cooperation between people related to this interest in the evolved and constructed emotional life of individuals? Well, it's kind of obvious. There's a sense in which if we're agreeing goals with other people, doing stuff with other people, we are perhaps less interiorly obsessed, less self-obsessed. We surrender some of our pained narcissism to the construction of a great goal or a great object. And I'm interested in those forms of collective action that are subtle and are well suited and realize the terrain of human nature that we have, all of us, inherited from evolution, and to some degree from upbringing, but a large degree from evolution, and that we're going to be able to live amongst each other in sophisticated and complex ways which recognize that emotional inheritance. And that's a big subject. It's probably one of the bigger subjects, but it's a reason why I'm looking at, what would seem like old-fashioned socialist texts, because in a sense I want to read them for their underlying theory of human nature and to see how they can cope with tribalism, in-group, out-group, rivalry, status, etc., as much as they can deal with the fact that people care for each other, so therefore they construct entities that help them care for each other, that they are playful, imaginative, constantly exploring their options, that they are curious and appetitive and seeking for a reason to be alive in the world. There's an emotional repertoire or landscape that good organisation can respond to, and so I'm interested in that, and I've perennially been interested in that. And believe it or not, there's a connection to these next two PDFs from the neuroscience and from the cooperation or organisation theory. And the next two are Reflections on the Mercury Music Prize, an interview with Simon Frith, and Strength in Numbers, a social history of Glasgow's popular music scene by Robert Anderson. And I'm obviously picking up these resources because I'm a working musician, and I have been for 40 years, as long as I've been a writer and a futurist and an advocate, activist. And in a way, being in a band or being with other musicians or working with my brother Gregory or working with the people that you work with in the music business is a constant laboratory test of how you can get individualists, people obsessed with their inner landscape, to work together in public, and the musical repertoire, the coming together of a band to perform songs or write songs is one of those, is a constitute. It's not an institute, it's a constitute. It can, the creativity and the magic and the significant cooperative action, qualitatively rich cooperative action, can happen under many different circumstances and at many different stages. It can happen as you're sharing a Spotify playlist. It can happen when you're in a sweaty nightclub playing at night. It can happen on the tour bus. It can happen across being sharing material and then that inspiring you to make music. That's a constitute. It's also a play space. Play is one of my great themes, as people who know me will know from having written the book in 2004, The Play Ethic. But play is a wonderful capacity for human beings to design, test, prototype that relationship between their powerful driving emotions and goals and ideals and fears, and somehow make an organisation or a structure out of it. I'm very taken with the idea from Deleuze and Guattari of assemblages of different heterogeneous elements coming together to make something beautiful. Different heterogeneous elements coming together to make something beautiful is the definition of pop, jazz, soul, performance, musical creation. But there's something in, even sociologists like these in their PDF, there's something in dwelling on music as a form of human organisation, which could maybe, if we dwell on it enough, give us clues about how to live complexly with each other, peaceably with each other, creatively with each other. Not that I'm idealistic about creativity. I'm obsessed with AI in a moment, and we'll deal with AI in a later constitute. But it's as constructive AI as it is destructive. It's a way to maybe come up with great scientific discoveries, but those great scientific discoveries can feed into a military-industrial complex and kill us all. So I think to conclude this episode of the Constitute, one of the reasons to be so eclectic is because we're on the precipice, we're on the very edge. I think we have been in that state of affairs for a while as a human species. And we need to draw dots between disparate areas of knowledge and practice so that we can solve our predicament, which is that we shouldn't really blow ourselves to pieces. We should be raising great clouds of possibility. That's what we should be doing. And let's try and do it. But that's my animus in this little video. I hope you enjoy it. Please respond. There will be links below this where we post it on Substack. And as they used to say in my youth, ad astra. onwards.